All right, for the next recipe, what we're going to prepare is a nice salad. And now, other than normal salads with just a little bit of lettuce leaves and a couple other bits and pieces, we're going to bulk it out with some really healthy grains such as quinoa. We're going to use beetroot. Okay, so I'll show you how to peel that down and roast it up. We've got organic cherry tomatoes, so much sweeter in taste. We've got some basil, cucumber, and we're going to make a nice little white balsamic dressing. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is prepare the beetroot. So if I come over here, I'm going to top and tail this bad boy. I'm going to peel it up. And I'm just going to cut it into wedges once I've peeled it. I'm going to marinate with a little bit of salt and pepper, olive oil, and crushed garlic. I'm going to cover it with foil, and I'm going to roast it in the oven until it's tender. Now you can boil beetroot. If you're going to boil it, you usually want to use something like a raspberry vinegar or something along those lines to help keep the color. But I find when you boil beetroot, you lose a lot of the flavor and it can become quite bland. But I guess it all depends on how attentive you are when cooking it. I find roasting it, it shrivels a bit, but it really holds on to the sweetness and all the nutrients. Now with beetroot, you don't have to worry about it being ultra soft because you can eat it raw. Okay, and when it's still firm into the bite, like most other vegetables, you've got a lot more nutrients in it. So I'm just going to cut that in half here, and then I'm going to cut nice little wedges like that. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I have a little baking tray for me here, and this bowl. Every time I'm roasting vegetables, even if I'm at home for a Sunday roast or something like that, I always put the veggies in a bowl and add the oil and the salt and pepper, and I toss it together just to make sure everything gets evenly coated. If you just put it on a tray and then drizzle on top, you'll find that it just dries out and doesn't roast evenly. Because essentially what's happening when you're putting it in the oven with the oil is the oil conducts the heat, which then transfers the heat all onto the vegetables, and that's how they cook. So you want it to be nice and even. This is one of the secrets. Alright, so I got my beetroot. I'm going to crush this little clove of garlic. I really want to make it nice and small so it tosses through. A little trick when you're at home as well is always wear a glove when wearing beetroot because it stains, big time stains. Yeah, wash your hands for weeks trying to get the beetroot off you. Alright, a little bit of garlic, a drizzle of nice extra virgin olive oil, just a drizzle. Okay, salt, sea salt again, and a little bit of pepper. And I just toss it together. If you can't toss it, you can use a spoon, just mixing it. And this just really makes sure that it's all evenly coated with the oil. Okay. Now you can roast it without a cover, but you'll find that it really dries up and shrivels because it takes a little time to cook. Now what you can do is you can roast it halfway with the cover, and then the rest of the way take the cover off. So I've just got a little bit of foil here for my cover. Just gonna cover it up, and I'll take that and put that in the oven at 160 degrees and cook it. It takes about half an hour till it's nice and tender. You can pierce it with a knife. Alright, so we're just going to put it in the oven, and I've set that oven at 160 degrees, and I'll just set the timer for half an hour, and we can check it after 30 minutes. We want to make sure it gets nice and soft when we pierce it with a knife. Alright, so the next thing, we've got the beetroot in the oven, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cook this quinoa. Now quinoa is what they're calling these days the wonder grain. It's naturally gluten-free, so if you're gluten intolerant, safe to eat. It's high in iron and other essential vitamins and minerals, but the thing about quinoa is compared to other common grains is it's got the most antioxidants. So it's really good at reducing heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and other diseases in those sort of caliber. So when you cook quinoa, it's a lot like cooking rice, okay? So just in a cold pot, put the quinoa in, and the ratio is always 1 to 2, depending on the quinoa, but most quinoa is always generally going to be the same. So 1 to 2, meaning 1 cup of quinoa to 2 cups of vegetable stock. You can cook it with water, doesn't really matter, but I put a little bit of vegetable stock to add a little bit more flavor. A pinch of salt, and a bay leaf, okay? And we turn on the stove, and what we want to do is, just like rice, bring it to a real fast, rapid simmer, and then we reduce down the heat to a really slow simmer. We do that for 10 minutes with the cover on, and then we just remove it off and let it sit there for 20 minutes, and that will absorb the last of the liquid. Once it's boiling, you'll know this will start to swell up, so that's when we know it's boiling, and we'll reduce the heat. All right. The next thing we want to do is we want to prepare our dressing for the salad. So we're going to use white balsamic vinegar, a little bit of Dijon mustard, a little bit of just normal runny honey, and olive oil. Okay. So take a little whisk. You can use a fork, it's fine. So we'll start with just a little bit of mustard, 1 teaspoon of each. A little bit of honey. The honey just helps bind everything together. A little bit of sweetness. And honey's a good form of sweetness as well. It's good for you. And a little bit of the vinegar. So when you're making a dressing, you're always thinking about the combination between sour, sweet, and the oil binds it together. So I'm just going to give that a little mix together. Okay. See now the quinoa's blowing up, so we know that that's come to the boil. So turn it down to the lowest setting and reduce it down to a simmer. So we're going to simmer that for 10 minutes. Don't forget. So a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. So just mix that together. And extra virgin olive oil. So while mixing, this one up, whisk in the oil. And you know, you can use grapeseed oil or sunflower oil, something that's a little bit low in flavor, and you'll really take on the flavor of the mustard and the honey. I mean, I'm using extra virgin olive oil because I love olive oil. And you have a nice little dressing. The next thing I want to do is prepare the goat's cheese. So this is goat's cheese with the rind removed. You can buy it at the supermarket. It's in like a little tube. It's usually got the rind on it. Take the rind off and pull out all the nice crumbly bit. That's the bit you want. So, I mean, if you're making this in a big batch for a barbecue or something like that at home, you can do it in the blender for best results. But we're just going to take a little bit of this goat's cheese and I add a little bit of yogurt. Now the reason I do a little bit of yogurt is 1, yogurt's nice, and 2, to help cut out that really, you know, sometimes goat cheese is a little bit salty. So I just do this just to make it a little bit less intense in flavor. And I just want to really bash that into a puree. See, it's gone nice and smooth. That is delicious. All right, so we've got the goat's cheese, we've got the dressing ready to go. All right, so the quinoa has been simmering now for 10 minutes, then we let it sit there for 20 to 30 minutes. And if we uncover that now, all the liquid has been absorbed, which is good. And I just add a little bit of olive oil while it's cooling down, just so it doesn't stick together, and also add a nice bit of flavor. So fluff that all up, and that's ready to go for the salad. Let it cool down a little bit more. Okay, and then out of the oven I have brought the beetroots. All right, so they're nice and cooked now. I'll show you with the knife. It just really slices through nice and easily. Still a lot of color, but soft and tender. All right, so I get my salad mixing bowl. When you're making salads, it's always best to toss it all together. Okay, so I take a little bit of cucumber, cut that in half. So some slices of cucumber. Our organic ripe cherry tomatoes. Cut them in half. Now the next little trick that I always do for myself, and one of the secrets to how us chefs make salads so tasty, is you always season a little bit the tomato and the cucumber. Just give that a little bit of a season. That helps. If you eat tomato by itself, it's nice, it's just tomato, it's still good. But when you add a little bit of seasoning, it transforms to this most fantastic little treat. Okay, so then we're going to, a little bit of basil, just pick a few leaves. You can add more or less depending how much you like. I like basil, so like that. I'm just going to not try and chop it too fine or anything, just like that. And then here I've just got little mixed lettuce leaves. You've got frisee and Boston lettuce and all sorts of bits and pieces in here. So I'll toss that in there. That's good. I add now this beetroot. Is that enough? The quinoa. Fair bit of quinoa. One more. Why not? Some of our beautiful white balsamic dressing. That's probably enough. So the dressing just helps lubricate and combine. If the dressing's not good, the whole salad's usually not going to be any good. So I'm just going to put that over here. All right, so I take some of my goat cheese puree that I've made. A good spoonful of that. Now I want to smear that onto the bottom of the salad. And I put the goat cheese on the bottom because if I put it on top, it sort of just kills the salad. Now if it's on the bottom, as you're eating it, you can just use your fork to keep bringing a little bit of the goat cheese up into every bite. And it just really goes well with the white balsamic and the honey. And the quinoa really binds it all together and makes it a nice, healthy, nutritious meal. Usually a salad's not essentially a whole meal, but definitely you could eat this and be satisfied. It's a great thing to have for lunch or for dinner.